Hello and welcome to my channel. This is a third consecutive video on the long take series. If you have not watched the previous ones, click on the link above. Moving on, today we're going to be looking at one of my favorite sequences from The Sacrifice by Andrei Tarkovski. Yeah. Now, as always, you needn't watch the film first to understand what we speak of here, but just a sequence used in the video.
Like TV from other dimensions has a somewhat looser feel to it.
Yeah, it's got an almost improvisational tone.
Moving on, the scene starts off with a man fallen on the ground whilst his house burns into flames. To start off, at the very beginning itself, we have a contrasting color scheme as well as resultant identities. The foreground is green and full of life, whilst something inanimate in the midground burns to the ground with its battle with the elements, finally attaining life. The trees in the front and around the house remain unharmed as of now. There's a bright white car that stands at a distance not too far away from the house, and the man, which may signify again an autopsy of crossroads, where one can either stay and try to save whatever is left of the debris, or stay and watch before you leave this life behind altogether. Great metaphor to life, as is. Water is another element directly contrary to fire in terms of color, properties, and significance. Yet, here water lies in the foreground, probably from the rain, remaining uninvolved, as if somehow it was an act of the elements reclaiming what's theirs. Further adding to the odds is that if it were to rain at this very moment, it could act as a savior to the house and its constituents. But in this case, not quite. Here the camera starts tracking parallelly as more characters are introduced within the shot. They tumble and stumble across as they make their way through the damp water. Now, before I pique your interests any further, let me explain another element within the space and time of a shot. Action zones. Now, there is physical space and then there is cinematic space. The space you see on the screen. Technically, it can be broken down into 4 different sides, so it forms a perfect square and or rectangle. This entire sequence has been entirely shot in one plane and or side, the one that's directly facing the camera. The camera tracks parallelly in the same plane to reveal elements on the further right and then back. Now, within the cinematic space, which has been established eventually, one can create action zones. An action zone is basically a zone attributed to a particular established cinematic space within which some action is happening and is directly or indirectly privy to the camera. More about that in a minute. Let's come back to the sequence at hand. The man is also wearing a suit which has a yin-yang symbol at the back of it, which reinforces the duality of the sequence we spoke of earlier. The straight line of empty tree trunks establish and exert the spatial elements to their fullest potential as it extends the midground, which until now was only the greener part of the grass, to much further away, halfway through the faded orange grass. We hear the sound of glass breaking, amidst other things, where the house is almost calling out from within. Colors are quite contrasting with black, green, faded orange, grey from the smoke, and finally the fire. The frame's spatial elements are modulated by the positioning of the characters as they make their way through to Alexander. The black car directly faces the white car in the other frame near the house, reinforcing the yin-yang symbol. The faded grass at the back, I believe, shows the gradual decay awaiting Alexander and or the house in itself. Contrary to what we saw in terms of framing in 1917, quite interestingly, because both the sequences revolve around a house burning down. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. What have you been thinking since we moved away from the house? It's interesting and ironical because the camera here parallelly tracks and remains uninvolved, signifying and personifying us as a bystander. Yet it forces us not to see the bigger picture with an omnipresent view of the house, which constantly builds suspense and curiosity as it makes us think how much of it has been burned to ashes so far. Why isn't the camera panning or tracking back? This is the power of perspectives. The camera allows you to have free will to whatever you want to look at consciously, but it has also heavy restraint to hold you from seeing the bigger picture. We want the camera to track back. It generates a pull, a heavy sense of curiosity. Now back to my earlier point about action zones. A trick to best utilize long takes and to categorize as one in the first place is to imbue multiple timelines within the shot. We can do so by using action zones. If you look at the first frame, it establishes only part of the entire physical space as the cinematic space. Nonetheless, since some action or activity is happening in this zone, it becomes an action zone to which the camera is privy and remains to be directly in the line of sight of the camera. Now, another interesting element to note here is the burning house. If the house wasn't on fire and the man had just left this frame onto the next one as the camera tracks parallelly with him, the first frame would become redundant in terms of an action zone because it does not hold an action as of now until the camera pans back with the man running back. But by lighting the house on fire, we are creating a timeline within this action zone, which is the timeline of the fire and how it remains to be a concurrent element with the amount of time it would take for the house to completely burn down and the fire to diminish consequently. And by moving away from the same frame, we create a second timeline of the man and the other people involved. This is what sends our curiosity off the roof. We're constantly imagining as to how much of the house is already burned to ashes. Another great element to notice here is time compression. While we move away from the house in the cinematic space, there remains a chance of time compression wherein we have a window to compress physical time with respect to cinematic time by accelerating the rate of burning of the house within the time bracket within which we move back to the house. It's another great element of time modulation and inducing a sense of temporality. Nonetheless, I would like to mention that with respect to my knowledge on this particular shot, it is shot completely in one take and there remains to be no intention of time compression. But it is a good window to do so in any setting likewise. Let me know in the comment section below if you also think that time was compressed by accelerating the rate of the fire as we saw in the video, or even otherwise as to why you think it may not have been the case. Fun fact, this is actually the second take. The first take did not go as planned, they had to burn the house down again. Now we have VFX. Yay, environment. Moving on, we are introduced to two main timelines, one of the burning house and the other which is of the man having a breakdown, amongst others around him, which further lead to a layered temporal experience, often referred to as the crux of adopting a long take. The sound design is quite intricately placed here, with the sound of the glass and other things shattering inside the house as it burns to the ground. Another new element introduced is the one of the ringing telephone. It literally and figuratively calls out to him. The burning house and the flaming fire can also signify his mental state with respect to his thoughts, which crumble him one at a time, and exactly how long it takes for him to have a complete breakdown with respect to the house as it is completely burned. We see at various instances him trying to make his way back to the burning house rather than admitting to his condition. I think it's quite a stark representation of a mental breakdown and battling on two grounds, both with their own consequential choices. Here he moves towards and away from the house as we see another woman inspecting the scenario. The car is suddenly set on fire, making a loud noise, depicting another spiraling displacement in the real-time choice he's trying to make. And all this while, the house goes through various stages of burning, as does Alexander, figuratively. Character placement, blocking, and movement is essential for this long take to work, and also quite pivotal to the entire sequence as there is no room for error. Moreover, it's the characters' movement along the space as well as the ambulances that give the camera incent to move along the spatial elements to uncover various actions whilst also dynamitizing the space as a whole. The cycling, Alexander's movements, the ambulance's rather long U-turn to reveal and provoke another action sequence within the frame are all cues for characters to unveil the spatial elements as something absolutely sinister happens in the midground with the burning of the house. Quite morbid, I must say. The house goes through various stages of burning down, each of which is revealed to us at separate times within the sequence, which helps us modulate the elements within the midground with lighting and reflection of the water on the ground, the throbbing flames, and the smoke from the resultant of it, both from the car and the house, and how they make for a contrasting color palette, let alone physical form, even after being the resultant of the same fire. Another thing to note is how the fire burns down the house to its inherent skeletal structure at the end, which I feel is quite synonymous to Alexander's breakdown. The sound is diegetic, as it is either seen in the frame or implied otherwise. The color palette is contrasting with shades of black and white from the costumes, cars, and ambulance, grey and black from the smoke, the orange and the yellow from the fire, with heavily contrasted green and pale orange from the field, along with reflections from the water reflecting the various stages of the house on fire, both literally and figuratively. The sequence also speaks about how bleak human life is, with comparison to the burning house, and how it takes just about a few minutes for both the house to burn down, as well as for him to have a breakdown. The simultaneity of the two elements makes for a concoction which riles our senses and perceptive sense of time, as it guides our awareness to various elements within the mise-en-scene. To reiterate, I say, this is the power of a long take. Alright then, that will be it for this video. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be the first one to see the next video. Also like and comment below what you think of this clip or if you have anything you would like to add to. Alright then, until next Thursday. Just kidding.
Did you get any of that?